Andalusia is considered objectively to be the epitome of coexistence when the Muslims ruled it. When Isabella of Spain came in, she implemented European tolerance, which is just to massacre the Jews and kick out the Muslims. Sarajevo today is called the Jerusalem of Europe, because when the Muslims ruled Sarajevo, it was the only city in Europe in which the religions could live side by side. I watched the world flip history completely on its head and say the rest of the world is anti-Semitic because we refuse to condone a genocide. That how could you be so anti-Semitic that you would deny the victims of genocide to commit a genocide of their own? How could you be so anti-Semitic to allow victims of persecution to commit persecution of their own? Why are you anti-Semitic? The anti-Semites killed 6 million Jews, and as a compensation, we're allowing them to commit their own genocide against another people. I never thought that we would see the Western institutions where everybody said this is where the highest level of education takes place. I never thought they would use that education to flip history completely on its head. But thanks to social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, may Allah preserve them and elevate their status and preserve them as tools of this ummah. Say Ameen. Because I promise you, if the narrative was monopolized by CNN, BBC and the like, I promise you, you would see nothing about what's happening in Gaza. One of Israel's biggest issues and the Zionists' biggest issue is they are telling the world what is happening, but the Palestinians are showing the world what is happening. And one of the things that I think is always worth starting, even though that was a long introduction, but by the way, they told me I don't have time limit. And I told them, be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for. So I won't have to say that notorious line, I promise I'll finish on this point. Because now somebody made a meme on Twitch where it says, Sami, I'll finish on this point, Hamdi. And I think that's very unfair. Because I genuinely intend to finish on this point, even if the answer is 50 minutes afterwards. But I think one of the best ways to start this is to announce my intention of why I am here. I'm not here to say, go and stand up for justice. I'm here to beg you to stand up for justice. I'm not here to ask you to do something. I'm here to beg you to do something. I'm not here to try to convince you or the like. I'm here to tell you, to remind you that you have a power that nobody else has to deliver a blow and punish genocide in the history books. But before I get to that, I feel like first I need to convince you of this power that you have, because maybe you don't appreciate it. As it stands, the situation of Gaza today is very simple. For the past 5 days, Israel cut off the connection, which is why you've seen less content on social media about the tragedies that are unfolding. Israel believes that by cutting off the communication and massacring the journalists, more journalists have been killed in the past 100 days than the entire of World War II. Israel had a problem when it embarked on its genocide. The problem was too many people were seeing the brazen nature of genocide. And because too many people were seeing it, Israel sought to silence them. But before we get to this point, let me first explain to you exactly why and how you made Netanyahu and Blinken buckle. Some of you will have memorized this part of the speech, but I could not care less. Because you have to believe it, and if you believed it, you will continue to strive. The week before October 7th, there was a series of political moves that took place that suggested that the Palestinian cause was on its dying deathbed. Netanyahu stood before the United Nations, and in that ugly smirk of his, he stood up with the United Nations, he held up a map of his vision for peace in the Middle East. In this map, he had completely erased Palestine completely from this map. And he said, this is the future of the Middle East. And in the same breath, he said that normalization of ties with Saudi Arabia would be, quote, the greatest deal since the end of the Cold War. The Israeli ambassador on the same day gave an interview with Can Television, the Israeli channel. And he was asked, will the Israeli government agree to normalization with Saudi Arabia? And his words, quote, because Sheikh Google, may Allah preserve him, translated the interview for me, and then I asked a Jewish friend, not Israeli, because he's anti-Zionist, but I asked a Jewish friend to confirm Sheikh Google's translation. Sheikh Google is phenomenal these days in There's a joke that's been going on, not a joke, it's actually quite true. It says if you want to defeat Zionist propaganda, all you have to do is give them the mic. And they will just destroy the propaganda for them. Ben Gvir today, for example, is a good example. So the Israeli ambassador told Cannes Television, when the government realizes, let me start the quote again, normalization with Saudi Arabia means the complete Arab abandonment of the Palestinians. And when the government realizes the opportunities that presents, they will sign off on normalization of ties with Saudi Arabia. In the same week, Netanyahu managed to score a scoop against the Muslim world. He shook hands with the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who said to Netanyahu, we want good warm ties, we want to build a gas pipeline. This Middle East corridor that you announced at the G20 summit with Saudi Arabia and UAE, don't do it through Saudi Arabia and UAE, come do the Middle East corridor through Turkey. Remember, Turkey is the first country that recognized Israel, and remember, we've never actually done anything tangible. You know, yes, the Egyptians fought you in 2 wars. Saudi, the King Faisal cut off the oil. We kicked out an ambassador, but if you remember, we kicked out the ambassador when the Turk was killed on the flotilla, not because of the Palestinians. So there's room here for really good ties. Netanyahu shook hands and the Israelis took the picture and they taunted everybody with it. 2 months before that speech by Netanyahu, Yusuf al-Utayba, the UAE ambassador, gave a talk at one of the think tanks with a blue logo. I think it's Carnegie or Brookings. They love the blue color, I don't know why. Yusuf al-Utayba was asked, has normalization of ties produced any benefit for the Palestinians? And he said, quote, we realize we have no leverage on the Israelis when it comes to the Palestinians. And now it's up to the countries that will normalize to leverage that normalization for the sake of the Palestinians. But don't be too despondent. Do you know how many flights we have now between Tel Aviv and Abu Dhabi? And do you know what wonderful trade deals we've signed, economic trade deals that we've signed? Netanyahu in that week made a series of military maneuvers. He moved troops from the border with Gaza and moved them to the border with the Jenin refugee camp in preparation for an invasion of the West Bank. For those who don't know, in 2019, Netanyahu was getting ready to invade the Jenin refugee camp in the West Bank. He was stopped by Donald Trump because Donald Trump said, yeah, Jahil, UAE is about to normalize with us. Don't make it unnecessarily complicated. Give them 6 months to normalize and then go invade again. Netanyahu said, okay, fine, UAE normalized. They told the Muslim world we're normalizing to stop the invasion of the Jenin refugee camp. And then 6 months later, Netanyahu was about to invade again, but lost the election. His government fell. Naftali Bennett came after him. Naftali Bennett said, let's go. They began their invasion of the Jenin refugee camp, but they killed Shireen Abu Aqla, the Al Jazeera journalist. The public pressure was so much, Naftali Bennett was forced to pull back his forces after trying to invade Jenin refugee camp. Before he could try again, his government fell. Netanyahu came back to power. Netanyahu began amassing the troops again by the Jenin refugee camp to say this is a golden opportunity. Erdogan wants good ties. Bin Salman wants good ties. Bin Zayed wants good ties. For the record, the views expressed by the speaker reflect the speaker themselves. They do not reflect the organization that invited me, all those who brought me here. So if any of you plan to go to Jeddah, inshallah, you will have free passage to enter, inshallah. They have nothing to do with this. This is to do with me. I didn't tell them what I was going to say, and they didn't ask me what I was going to say. So just to make that absolutely clear, this is Sami rabble-rousing, has nothing to do with them. I saw some people recording. Be careful. Netanyahu said that given the Muslim leaders themselves are telling me that they are ready to normalize ties with me and they are ready to abandon the Palestinians, and Reuters reported before October 7th, Reuters reported that the Saudis had told the Americans that we're ready to set aside the Palestinian state as long as you give us a NATO-style security agreement, nuclear technology for a nuclear weapon, and support for Vision 2030, we're ready to set aside the Palestinian case. And that's why when the Saudi ambassador went to Palestine to meet Mahmoud Abbas in Ramallah, he wanted to pray in Al-Aqsa after meeting with Mahmoud Abbas. But the Palestinians told him, we will not let you set foot in Al-Aqsa, you treacherous traitor. And the ambassador turned around and said, due to scheduling issues, I have to go back to Riyadh. That's why when Netanyahu began to move the forces on the border with the Jenin refugee camp, invasion was imminent. And then the events of October 7th happened. We brush off what happened. When Israel began its genocide, there was a very unusual excitement in Washington. Blinken immediately got on a plane and he went straight to Tel Aviv. When he landed in Tel Aviv, he said, I'm here first as a Jew, not as a Secretary of State. Now I understand that sometimes, I realize that America is quite big, so maybe sometimes the study of history and geography is not a particularly strong thing, because you have America's a world in and of its own. So Blinken might have been forgiven for thinking that the Spanish Inquisition in Spain happened in Tunis, for example. Or maybe the Holocaust in Germany. Germany is not too far from Egypt, for example. Maybe he thought it happened there, or that kind of thing. In any case, he said, I landed here as a Jew, and I want to show my full support for Israel. There was an excitement about the genocide that was going to unfold. When Israel began its genocide of Gaza, on the first week, Blinken spoke to the Turkish Foreign Minister, and you know when they tweet the readout of the call, he wrote that I talked to my Turkish counterparts about what's happening in Palestine and the need for a ceasefire. Now the poor intern who wrote the tweet was probably sacked afterwards because the tweet was deleted within half an hour. But people like me screenshot this stuff. So they deleted the tweet. Why? Because Blinken had told the State Department no one is allowed to use the word ceasefire. No one is allowed to use the word pause. Because according to Blinken, this was a golden opportunity for Israel to finally annex more territory and finally to commit genocide. On October 20th, Biden proposed a bill. Biden said, I'm going to ask Congress to give money to Jordan and Egypt to take in the Palestinians. Because Biden felt that the issue of Egypt and Jordan was that they want to build tents in the Sinai Peninsula and they want to take Palestinians. But Sisi was refusing, and so was King Abdullah of Jordan. So Biden said maybe it's an economic issue. We, the American taxpayer, or you, the American taxpayer, sorry. God save the king. The American taxpayer will foot the bill for the tents that we want to put the Palestinian refugees in because we want to give this land to the Israelis. Now I like the West Coast, I'll be honest, I'm very happy to be here in the West Coast. And when I went to LA, the first time I went was last November. It's the first time I'd ever been to LA. The first time I came to America was 2018 for a wedding, 10 days. And then I flew back. I said, to be honest, UK is a bit better. Because I went to New York, Washington, and Raleigh. And I was like, you know what, but London is elegant, it's classy. And the Americans, I think their branding is a bit more than the actual substance of their city. Of course, then I came to the West Coast and I was like, Allahumma, I'll never spend winter anywhere else. Yeah, you guys have 27 degrees Celsius in November. SubhanAllah. When I landed in LA, of course, you have this 5-year-old being inside of you that wants to see all the sights that you saw in the movies. Beverly Hills, Hollywood, you know, all these things. You see, you know, so you take your camera like a tourist. Mama, I'm in Beverly Hills. Like, when I went to Beverly Hills, I was stunned because I saw rows of tents in the evening of homeless people. Biden said I could resolve this homeless situation with a few billion from Congress. But genocide is more important. Ethnic cleansing is more important. That 14 billion, instead of resolving the homeless situation in LA, I need to spend it to make more homeless people in Palestine so that I can give that land to the Israelis, because the Zionists believe that they have a 1,000-year-old claim to it. And so those Zionists, because it's not Jews, bear in mind, emphasis on this. The Jews have always been living in Palestine. And in fact, it was Umar ibn Khattab anhu, who brought the Jews back after the Christians kicked them out, the Crusaders. After Salah ad-Din brought them back again, after the Crusaders kicked them out. So the Jews had always been living side by side. And Jews are not the Jews that you just see in terms of white Jews. There are Moroccan Jews, there are Middle Eastern Jews, who've lived side by side with the Muslims for centuries. When the Zionists turned up to Palestine, they found the Jews living side by side with the Muslims. And when you look at the reports in that period, the Zionists were disgusted that the Jews had agreed to live side by side with the Muslims. The Zionists were horrified. They said, how do you accept to live side by side with these Muslims? We need to kick them out. When they initially came, the Jews of the region rejected the idea of Zionism. So the Zionists started to try to agitate society. This is not me saying it, this is the reports you can find in the 1920s and 1930s. So they turned up, there was an interesting, now I don't read Reddit. I don't, I promise. But someone screenshotted it and put it on Twitter. Just so I can save myself. I don't sit down pouring through Reddit threads. But they said there was a Zionist who did an ancestry test. And they said they found the ancestry test was all Eastern European. And they said, guys, I think there's a problem here. And somebody went, is anybody going to tell him? That the Zionists themselves, when they claim that they belong to the region, the Jews and Muslims are the ones who belong to the region. The Zionist is the Eastern European who wants to find the land because they were persecuted by anti-Semitic Europe. That's why part of me sympathizes with the Zionist project. Wait, let me finish this first, before you judge me. I sympathize with the Zionist project because I understand why it emerged. Because white supremacist anti-Semitic Europe did horrible things to the Jews. They would persecute them and massacre them simply because they were of a different religion or because they were a different breed. They tortured them across Europe for centuries. They made them second-class citizens for centuries. Eventually the Jews got tired and said, SubhanAllah, not SubhanAllah, but they said, for God's sake. Well, perhaps it was an atheist, so maybe he didn't say for God's sake. But in any case, they said the equivalent. And they said, we can't stay here in Europe and be persecuted like this. We need to have our own state, a state of our own where we won't be persecuted by anti-Semites who weren't the Muslims, the anti-Semites who were the white supremacist Europeans. The point that I'm making is that by the time that Israel begins its genocidal lie, Biden ignored the homeless in LA. And when I first came to the US in 2018, I was in a car in Raleigh attending this wedding where there were 8 of us from the UK and 400 from her side. And there was a brother in the car who started vomiting and his face became green. Now, just so you guys are aware, because I realize this is the privilege we have in the UK. If I go like this in the morning, I'll call my doctor, I'll say, can I see you? I coughed, I just want to make sure I'm okay. And I will go and the doctor will say, you're fine, but I felt it chesty, doctor. I felt it. I think I might have cancer. Stop talking nonsense, go home. If you need something, just take your Panadol or paracetamol. You sure I'm okay? I'm okay. So I suggested to this American brother, dude, just go see the doctor and make sure you're okay. No! He vomited again. Dude, it looks serious, man. Come on, like, let's just go. We'll just go to the doctor and get just make sure you're okay. No, don't call. And he vomited third time. We said, you know what is it here? 911. Yeah, so, okay. No, don't call 911. And we, the 8, in front of these 20 Americans, were like, guys, really, like, you guys are disgraceful. How can you watch your brother sick like this and you don't even want to call an ambulance? Like, dude, you know how much an ambulance costs here just to call it, to pick somebody up? So, SubhanAllah. Biden said, I don't want to give healthcare to these kind of people. Biden said genocide and ethnic cleansing is dearer to me than to provide healthcare like His Majesty the King has provided for us in the United Kingdom. God save the King. Somebody's going to rinse me for that. Without dwelling too much on the details, the reason why I start with this context is to highlight that we began this genocide with Blinken banning the State Department from using the word ceasefire, Biden trying to get Congress to foot the bill for the ethnic cleansing, and Israel and Netanyahu essentially saying we're going to eradicate. The question I want to pose to you here is, why did that change? What made Blinken go from no ceasefire to now talking about low intensity warfare? What made Netanyahu go from saying this is a war to flatten Gaza to say no guys, it's only against Hamas? What made Biden go from saying that we're giving flat out support to Israel to coming out and saying we're trying to work on a plan on a two-state solution? It was not because of the Muslim states. It was not because they had a change of heart. It was because of you. On the 28th of October, Biden announced that he would not be displacing the Palestinians. The reason being is they identified a problem. 2 days before, a Gallup poll came out that shocked the Democrats. It showed that Biden was behind his rival in 6 swing states. But what was worse for the Democrats is in those 6 swing states, the Muslims had the deciding vote. And the Democrats decided there's something going on here. And as a nerd, I read these Reuters articles because they're very significant. But I read the Reuters article. It said that the shocking thing about this poll is that Biden is falling in the polls over an issue where American troops aren't even on the ground. Usually when a US president is falling in the polls, it's because our boys are dying in areas that we can't even point to on a map. But this time, he was falling in the polls not because of American self-interest. He was falling because the Americans were being subjected for the first time since 1948. They were finally hearing the voice of the Palestinians. Why? Because when the Palestinians were documenting their own genocide, when they were documenting their own ethnic cleansing, 1.9 billion Muslims around the world picked up their phones, they amplified their voices, they broke the algorithm of social media, they smashed the monopoly of Israel over the narrative, and they managed to force a shift in public opinion that made Biden drop, not because of the economy, but because of the moral consciousness of America that turned around and said, we don't want to support a genocide. That's you did it. Blinken identified that this was a huge problem. Why? Blinken thought he had it in the bag. Blinken had gone to Saudi Arabia. He'd asked the Saudi Crown Prince, I need help. Now I understand sometimes, and for those non-Muslims here, Muslims sometimes have an inferiority complex. So when a Muslim tells them something, they don't automatically believe it. It's a secondary source. So I need to bring them Zionist sources and I need to bring them American sources for them to believe it. And I'm going to do that today, so please forgive me for not relying on my own sources. When Blinken went to Tel Aviv, he was supposed to go straight back to Washington. When he landed in Tel Aviv, he said, no, we're not going straight back to Washington, we have to go to the neighboring countries. And all of us analysts went, Allah, what's going on? What happened in this conversation with Netanyahu? That means he has to go to regional countries. Now, Washington Post, not Sami, Washington Post said, Blinken went to visit the neighboring countries to, quote, tamp down on public anger. Think about it. Blinken and Netanyahu sat in a war room and they said that while we want to commit genocide and ethnic cleansing, and while Blinken will provide a diplomatic cover, there's a risk to our ability to commit genocide and ethnic cleansing. And Netanyahu said, what is it? And Blinken said, it's these frustrating muzzies in America and their non-Muslim allies who are going to shout loudly about Palestine, and they will raise awareness and they will expose our genocide. I will go to the Saudi Crown Prince and I will seek help, because the Saudi Crown Prince was about to normalize ties without even a Palestinian state. So Blinken goes to Riyadh and he says, Your Highness, your Crown Prince, I need some help. The Crown Prince said, sure, no problem. My phone is over there, I can't do it. He said, no problem, I've got this sorted. Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam. Sheikh Abdul Rahman Sudais, Hayyak, yes. Find me an ayah in the Quran that can get the Muslims to calm down a bit on Gaza, Palestine. Our friend Blinken here has a bit of trouble with his... No problem. The khutbah since that moment was, Ya ibadallah, do not talk too much about Gaza. Make dua. Cry in your dua if you want to pour your heart out. Allahumma safusli. Allahumma weep in that regard. But don't talk too much about Gaza, because in the words of Abdul Rahman al-Sudais, it's a fitna that will lead you to turn against your ruler. You have to obey your ruler and obey the scholars. Understand that there is a wisdom that when Israel begins its ground invasion and cuts off internet in Gaza, there's wisdom that on the same night Shakira is in Riyadh. He didn't actually say that, that's me adding to it. But Shakira was there on the same night, dancing away when Israel began its ground invasion. And all I know is hips don't lie. Stop. In any case, Blinken said to Netanyahu, we have a problem here. I've got the fatwa from Saudi Arabia that says that Muslims shouldn't talk about Gaza because it's a fitna. Again, the views expressed are those of the speaker alone. I know that I can't do Umrah, but these people have nothing to do with it. I'm the one who's come to grab or rouse. They've just come to listen, and they might go home and say, Wallahi, we need to keep away from the Sami guy because he's going to ruin Hajj and Umrah for us. Although, I don't know, these days now you can go to Saudi Arabia, you can land in Jeddah, I'm being serious, you can land in Jeddah, you can go to a concert and a rave, and then finish, and then go make Tawbah in Mecca, just over there, you know, and then come back, each one has their own thing, why should we be so strict on these things? You know? If you want to do Mecca, Medina, keep it like the Vatican. Italy has the Vatican. You can go party in Arabia and go to the Vatican. Islam should be Mecca, Medina, not to Vision 2030 is the way forward. As Iggy Azalea said, bow down to the goddess. I didn't even know these names before Bin Salman came around. I didn't know these names at all. But now, astaghfirullah, I'm really good with pop culture now. I know Nicki Minaj, I know Iggy Azalea. Mariah Carey was from when I was younger, it's true, but now I know all of them because Bin Salman introduced them to me, Blinken said that we have a problem, that while UAE has issued a statement on our behalf that the Palestinians are to blame, that it doesn't matter they were occupied since 1948, that they were persecuted, there's apartheid, it doesn't matter, they're to blame for everything that happens. And then the UAE panicked a little bit and was the first to provide funding for aid in Gaza because they said we need to be careful here. We want to preserve normalization, but we're also aware that, Muzis are getting a bit angry. I say Muzis because that's the derogatory term they use for Muslims. Blinken said we have a problem. Netanyahu said, what's the problem? He said that as a result of the shouting on the social media that's taking place, it's breaking the algorithm. And people are now turning against us in the US, so I have a marketing strategy. What's your marketing strategy? instead of calling it genocide and ethnic cleansing, being brazen about it, I have a really good idea. Why don't we do this? Why don't we tell the Palestinians, listen, we want to take you home and we want to bomb the living daylights out of your house, but we want to be merciful about it. We give you 4 hours every day to leave your home so you don't get killed in the process. And then we make them go through humanitarian corridors under the protection of the Israeli army. Bibi, what do you think? Bibi, Netanyahu's nickname. Netanyahu said, according to Axios, I need to know that this isn't a plan by Biden to lure me into a ceasefire. Allah says you think their hearts are united, but قُلُوبُهُمْ شَتَّى, their hearts are divided. That's why when the humanitarian pause was introduced, Biden made a statement when he came off the plane and he said, it came late, but at least it came. Because Biden was frustrated and Netanyahu was dragging his heels. The problem was, none of you refused to be quiet. You all started retweeting a picture of the Nakba of 1948 with a picture of the thousands and thousands of Palestinians being driven out of their homes. So that humanitarian pause meant that the next time the polls came out in the US, Biden fell even further. And not only that, new swing states were added. And those swing states were the likes of Arizona, where Muslims also have the deciding vote. Biden said, Ya Ilahi, not Ya Ilahi, but he said, oh my goodness. So Blinken got on the plane again. He broke all those climate change policies the Democrats keep going on about. He burned all those air miles for the sake of genocide and ethnic cleansing. And he landed and he said, Bibi, we're going to lose the elections if it continues like this. We need a hostage truce. Ben Gvir went wild, the right-wing ally of Netanyahu. He said, Netanyahu, if you agree to this hostage truce, I'll bring your government down. Netanyahu said, but I don't know what to do. These Americans are threatening to pull the plug. CNN reported that Biden told Netanyahu that as a result of, quote, the bombardment of the videos documenting the atrocities being committed in Palestine, we can no longer support you in the manner that you want. You don't have months, you probably only have a matter of weeks. And that's why Eli Cohen, the Israeli foreign minister, came out afterwards and said we probably have 2 or 3 weeks left before international pressure really comes to bear. I ask everybody here, do you think that shift came about because they had a change of heart on genocide? Do you think it came about because they had a change of heart on ethnic cleansing? Do you think that they woke up one day and realized they're committing a genocide and regretted it? No, it was because a pressure was brought to bear by a people who refused to be quiet, who said that yes, while we don't have an army, while we don't have oil to cut off, while we don't have the necessary funds to force a ceasefire, we refuse to be quiet, we refuse to be silent, and we shout from the tops of the ceilings, ceasefire now, free Palestine. And that resulted in an unprecedented shift in American public opinion that Israel is now concerned that its allies will no longer come to its assistance in future because nobody wants to be associated with genocide. You did that, not those Muslim countries out there. There are some who will sit here and say, Sami talks about social media and he wants to liberate the Ummah via WhatsApp. Let me explain to you why you made a difference. How? The technical term. Because sometimes I don't claim to know tech, but I sat with tech guys and I heard from them. I'm repeating what they said. So the algorithm, how it works is, when my sister, who's sitting in front of me over here, who decided to take advantage of this trip to fly from London to come here, claiming to show me support, but in any case, like it is what it is. You have shown support, mashallah. You know, she joined me in New York, now she's on the West Coast. I kept telling her the sun in the West Coast is amazing. She hasn't seen any sun yet in the West Coast. My sister told me, Sami, you need to set up TikTok. I told her, why on earth would I waste my time watching people dance on a social media platform? She said, dude, you need to be, like with the trends. I told her, what trends? How is this something I want to spend my night times watching? May Allah preserve TikTok. For those who don't know how the algorithm works, algorithm creates a bubble for you to watch. Your algorithms only show you the videos they think you like. So for some people it's Kim Kardashian, for some people it's Kanye West, for some people it's Love Island, for people like me it's Ronaldinho and Zinedine Zidane and soccer, as you guys call it, and some other things as well, right? For something outside your algorithm to break the algorithm, something outside your bubble to break the algorithm, it can't just be popular, it has to be stupendously popular. Because the algorithm is very capitalist. Anything that's popular, it shares. So for the Palestinian content to enter everybody's phone, it can't be shared in the millions, it has to be shared in the billions. Now when Elon Musk took over Twitter, I can't lie to you, I saw all the intellectuals saying this is the greatest tragedy to happen. I didn't know why it was the greatest tragedy, but I didn't want to sound like I'm not an intellectual. So I joined the bandwagon. Oh, Elon Musk is taking over Twitter. Oh. And then you read the tweet saying it will hurt free speech. It will hurt free speech. He will do this to it. He's going to do that. Oh, it's so bad. He's taking over Twitter. I didn't understand, but you know, you want to go with the wave, right? You want to sound smart. Elon Musk did something that Jack Dorsey would never do. First of all, Elon Musk lifted some of the restrictions on the free speech. I get, yes, right-wing benefited from it, but sometimes the harm brings the good from it. I'm not saying right-wing is good, by the way. Some people have said Sami is going around America saying people vote Trump. Those who make the accusation either bring the video and say, I said vote Trump, or I promise you, Yawm al-Qiyamah, I'll ask Allah, give me my just. I forgive him. I forgive him. So Elon Musk did something where he introduced the home page. Stay with me, I know it sounds simple and mundane. When you open X, I'll show respect to Elon Musk, I'll call it X. Yeah. When you open X, you now see tweets from accounts that you don't follow. Yes or no? Yeah. Now initially I was like, why am I seeing tweets from people that I don't follow? Who on earth is... Anyway, it's not very nice to say that particular account in this kind of environment. So I was stunned by it. But what that homepage was, is that it's a compilation of the most popular tweets at that time. So for some people, it was, you know, how, I realize this example might go fall on deaf ears on people who call handball football, but in any case, you know, Erling Haaland, for example, of Manchester City didn't win the Ballon d'Or, even though he scored 50 goals. But Lionel Messi did because he just won the World Cup in Qatar. So my popular tweet was all about soccer and football. The Ummah roared so loudly, the Ummah roared so ferociously that Paul, Michael, William, give me the names, Sarah, Joe, Jared, Jeremy, all these people, instead of seeing the next episode of the Kardashians, they saw the first tweet, Palestine, second tweet, Palestine, third tweet, Palestine. On TikTok, the bubbles were popped. Video, Palestine, second, Palestine, third video, Palestine, fourth, Palestine. As a result, they were looking at these videos and saying, oh my God, I thought the Israelis were the good guys. Look, they're killing babies. I gotta send this to mom and dad. They gotta know what's happening. In East London, mate, are you seeing what I'm seeing, mate? I can't believe they're killing babies. I'm seeing limbs being amputated without anesthesia. I saw a Zionist girl in LA do a video where she said that I grew up in a Zionist environment, never having heard the Palestinian voices. But as a result of TikTok, she didn't actually say that dua, but that's me. But in any case, as a result of TikTok, I finally heard the Palestinian voices for the first time. I can't unsee what I see, and I'm dedicating my account now to pro-Palestine, fulfilling the ayah of Allah. Conduct yourself in that which is best, for it may be the one you think was an enemy today, tomorrow becomes your warmest ally. Is the public opinion not shifting? It's shifting because the Ummah is roaring and everybody is hearing the Palestinian voices for the first time, and that's because of you. Israel spent billions on a PR campaign that the Ummah broke for free. Israel spent billions to put an IDF advert before the Yaqeen podcast, and to put an IDF advert before Surah Taha, Surah Saud al-Shurayn, and still they lost their monopoly on the narrative that the Ummah broke for free. I saw a video on TikTok, African American, lovely sketch, where she says, she does her acting out. So October 7th, oh my God, these barbarians, they came, they killed us, they killed civilians, they killed that kind of thing. She goes, oh my God, that's horrible. Why did they do that? Why do that? Oh, I don't know, they're just barbaric cannibals. They just do that, just get up and kill people. Oh my God, that's scary, that's frightening. I don't want to live in a world like, I gotta read about this, I gotta read who these people are. No, don't read about it, don't read about it, no, I gotta read it. No, don't read about it. People are waking up to the reality of the apartheid genocidal regime that is the Zionist regime. People are waking up to the atrocities that are being committed. People are waking up and seeing 5-year-olds being imprisoned by the Israeli regime. People are seeing the torture. They said that when the hostages were released from the Palestinian side, they said that they have Stockholm Syndrome. I say, okay, let's suppose they have Stockholm Syndrome. Why does no Palestinian have Stockholm Syndrome when they come out of Israeli prisons? Why is it only these guys have Stockholm Syndrome and these guys never have Stockholm Syndrome? When the Israeli pulls him out like that in a headlock and says, go, a 6-year-old kid or 7-year-old kid, and says, go back to your family, and then goes and bombs the daylights out of them afterwards. The point that I'm saying is the shift has taken place because none of you were quiet. You all chose to move, you all chose to mobilize. And that's why Biden is now falling in the polls. That's why Biden is now falling in the polls of an issue where US troops are not even on the ground. The reason why I stand before you today is to implore you to appreciate that power. I know some of you will say, yes, Sami, that's all well and good, but a genocide is still happening. That much is true. But we have to be patient with the process as well. By patience, what I mean is, if your voice didn't matter, why are they trying to shut down your TikTok accounts? If your voice didn't matter, why are they shadow banning #Palestine? If your voice didn't matter, why are they trying to censor the campuses? If your voice didn't matter, why are they trying to shadow ban the hashtags that are coming out in for Palestine? Why are they asking for pro-Palestinian pages to be taken down? Why is it that freedom of speech, when you allow it, justice prevails? And so now you're trying to repress it because you're trying to uphold the injustice. They told us freedom of speech was the most important thing. And to be honest, as a Muslim, I agree. I'll be honest with you, I'll tell you why. I know some imams might say, Islam thrives in freedom. Because Islam is built upon the wholesale acceptance of Allah and His Prophet with the heart. Allah tells the Muslim, I don't accept somebody who's been forced into prostration. So don't bother forcing them into it. You either convince them and win their heart, or you tell them, Lakum dinukum waliya din, to your religion, to be mine. Islam thrives in freedom. Islam, the Muslim countries and Muslim people have been persecuted for centuries, subjected to genocide, subjected to colonization, subjected to all sorts of barbaric treatment on the part of the free world. None of them gave up La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. On the contrary, I find Islam in the heart of America, on the other side of the world. And let me be brutally honest, with all due respect to you all here, if the earth was flat, this would be the edge. Because London is the center, to be honest. Because I can't lie to you. When I came to LA, somebody found out I was in LA, they said, Sami, come to Chicago. Now, as a naive, jahil, ignorant individual, I thought that LA to Chicago is like London, Paris, 35-minute flight. I thought it's like London, Frankfurt, 1 hour 15. Yes, CD, London, Zagreb, 2 hours. Okay, CD, London, Istanbul, the length of Europe, 3 hours. So I said to them, no problem, brothers, go ahead, you can book the ticket. They said the ticket 4 hours. And not only that, during the worst part of it was, I said I wouldn't make weather jokes, but this really hurt my heart. I left sunny, blue skies LA. And I landed in miserable, cold Chicago. And when they said to me, Sami, welcome to Chicago, I told them, you brothers have no shame. How could you pull me out of LA to bring me here? Over something we could have done via Zoom. It would have been better if they'd flown me to Chicago first, then LA, but how could you make somebody who only sees summer 5 days a year, how could you show them what LA looks like in winter, and then bring them back to the misery of the cold? I'm sorry, brothers, they're probably going to see this and going to be like, Sami, we told you we're sorry. I'm like, yeah, I accept the apology, but it still hurts. The point that I'm saying is that you see that for all of the persecution, even during Gaza, how many have you seen enter Islam as a result of Gaza? How many have you seen say that as a result of the resilience of the Palestinians who keep going? Because all the Palestinians have to do is get up and leave their homes and they live their lives. All they have to do is get up and say, we abandon our religion, we abandon our ways, God bless the Zionists, and we're willing to leave and we'll live our lives and we'll go to Egypt and go to Jordan. Why do they choose not to do so? Because they stand for justice and what is right. They would rather be killed than abandon justice. They would rather be slaughtered than abandon what is right. They're not a people that can be bought. They're not a people that can be sold. They're a people who stand for what's right, and that's what inspired people to enter a religion that people in the West say is declining or receding or is weak. Ibadallah, many of you insist that the Ummah happens to be weak. If the Ummah is weak, why is Islam the fastest growing religion? What is it about this weak religion that makes people abandon the luxuries they live in to join Islam? What is it that makes them abandon the prosperous world to go and join these weak Muslims? It's that the message of justice and righteousness is something that resonates in every single person's heart. And that's what we see happening with Gaza and Palestine. The idea that when they saw the truth for the first time since 1948, you move the entire poles of the public opinion. Such that Kamala Harris, I'm not going to try her accent is hard. Kamala Harris came out and said that we're launching the first counter-Islamophobia initiative in the history of the US. Allah, Allah. Now I have a question. Do you think she did that because her heart hurts over what's happening in Palestine? Do you think she did that because her heart pains when she sees the amputated kids that had their legs amputated, the anesthesia? She did it why? Because the Democrats got together and they said, guys, look, I know that Trump is on the other side and he doesn't like the Muslims, but these Muslims have gone bonkers. They're actually talking about punishing us. One of the Democrats said, throw them a bone. You give them some counter-Islamophobia or something like that. When that didn't work, they sent an email out. They said, Trump wants to impose the Muslim ban, which was originally Obama's policy. And I'll tell you how I know it's Obama's policy. Because before coming to America and realizing what a great country this actually is, and I mean it sincerely, America is phenomenal. Now I understand why people love this country. But as a result of foreign policy issues, I used to tell people that I will never travel to the Eye of Sauron. I will never travel to this place where so much evil emanates from. So when my friend met a Yemeni girl in Raleigh and he wanted to get married, he called me and he said to me, Sami, we're going to do the wedding in America. I told him, Ya akhi, taqillah fi Allah. Why are you making me come all the way to America? Bring her to London. Well, I know of all the women you could have met. Why someone from America? There's, subhanAllah, there's 7 billion people in the world. He said, listen, if you don't come to America for my wedding, I will never forgive you. I said, akhi, because of Obama, I went to Sudan. No, I didn't go to Sudan because of Obama, but I went to Sudan, and because of Obama, I can't get the ESTA. I have to go to the embassy and beg them to let me in their country. Would you tolerate me to denigrate my dignity, to go and tell them, please let me into your country? He told me, listen, you will denigrate your dignity until you have none left, and you will come to my wedding. So I delayed the interview. They gave me the first interview, I chose not to go. The second interview, I chose not to go. 2 weeks before his wedding, he calls me. He tells me, listen, I don't think you took me seriously. Wallahi al-azim, I will never forgive you until the day of judgment. There's 400 of her people, there's only 8 of mine. I need you there. I was like, screw the day I got to know you. So I went to the embassy and I stood in a long queue. And I went in, and the American embassy, I know Americans are very friendly, especially this side of America. I realized that there's a difference between East Coast and West Coast. West Coast, you walk down the street and you're like, hey, how are you? And you're like, whoa, whoa. Because London, we don't do that. London, you just walk past each other. Even if you bump into each other, you don't say sorry, just go. Very much like New York. Like, no, hey, I'm walking over here. On the West Coast, it's very much, hey, how are you? And you're like, I'm fine. Have a good day. Is there something wrong with it? You're too happy here. The embassy is not like that. The embassy is, what's the purpose of your visit? I'm going for a wedding in Raleigh. How long is your stay? No idea. Maybe 10 days, 11 days. I promise I won't go 1 second longer. And what do you do? I'm a risk consultant. By this time, my mother's Algerian, you know, and our blood gets a bit fiery sometimes, you know. I appreciate sometimes, I put my foot in it sometimes. I acknowledge that. So I lost my temper. I said, you know what? I have dignity too. Put Sami Hamdi in Google. I said, excuse me? I said, put it in Google. I was quoted by Fox News yesterday. He looked a bit right-wing. I was quoted in Fox News yesterday. Don't judge me. They quoted Al Jazeera. I spoke to Al Jazeera and they quoted from Al Jazeera. I didn't actually give a quote to Fox News. So he puts my name in Google and he goes, oh yeah, you were quoted by Breitbart as well. Again, don't judge me. And I was like, yeah. And he went, oh, here's your visa. Welcome to America. And I went, all I need to do is be right-wing and I'll be safe in America, inshallah. Alhamdulillah, the reason I'm saying this is how the changing perceptions are happening in America, where I can fly 11 hours and I'm seeing people standing for Palestine the same way that we're standing here in London. And the final part of this speech, I promise to behave here, is to remind you of the opportunity that you have before your hands. But before I do that, let me tell you about this Muslim ummah that made the change. Let me tell you about this ummah that you called weak. Let me tell you about this ummah that you said had no power. Let me tell you about this ummah that you felt could never make the change and could never stand for Gaza. Some of you will be looking at the massacre and saying that as a result of this massacre, everything looks bleak and nothing can change. Let me tell you about my ummah. In 1945, the Algerians, the French had just been liberated from Nazi Germany. The Americans came in and they managed to rescue the French, because the French fell in 2 weeks. When they were liberated from Nazi Germany, the Allies got together, they wrote a wonderful document. Every man is born free and every people have the right to self-determination. Now, my mother's people, the Algerians, believed that document applied to them. So when the French were celebrating in Paris, the Algerians took to the streets in Stif, Germ and Kharata, and they said, we want this freedom too, we want to be part of it. The French were so horrified that Algerians believed themselves entitled to freedom that they went in 1 week and massacred 30,000 Algerians. Now, the French say they massacred 12,000, which even if you're going to admit it, 12,000 is a hefty number. The Algerians say 50,000. Fine, you want to say my people exaggerate? Okay, fine. I've gone for the middle line, 30,000. They massacred 30,000 Algerians. At the time, the Ummah said, this is such a horrible massacre, there's no hope for us moving forward. And at that time, they said that the Algerians have been taught such a valuable lesson that they will never resist us again, they will never take to the streets again. The French were convinced we taught them such a lesson, the way Netanyahu wants to do to the Palestinians, that they will never dare to stand for freedom and justice again. The declassified documents in France show this was a consensus in Paris. 17 years later, Algeria was liberated and the French were kicked out. The Algerians were never at any point militarily superior to the French. The French still left. And when the French left, the Algerians didn't chant, look at what we did in Algeria. They chanted, Ya Muhammad Mabruk Ali, Al-Jazair Raj'at li. Oh Prophet Muhammad, congratulations. Algeria has been returned to you. All of the times the French used to line up the Algerian women and they used to rip their headscarves off and say, you are now liberated. And when they used to go and massacre and torture the men, my grandfather was electrocuted. He had horseshoes dug into him, burnt into him. One day, 4 French soldiers, they saw my great aunt, she was walking pregnant. They joked, they took their knives out, they said, let's see what gender this baby is. And they moved to rip open her stomach to see what the baby is. My great uncle was 18 years of age, gets a rifle, starts shooting at them to tell them to leave her alone. They went to his house that evening, they riddled him with bullets to say, how dare you stand up to the French. The French, they used to try to ban the Arabic language, ban the Muslim practices. Until 1920, the scholars had to come together to try to revive the Islamic identity in Algeria again. Despite those civilizing mission, as they called it, the Algerians still chanted, Ya Muhammad Mabruk Ali, Al-Jazair Raj'at li. Gaza might be the massacre that you are heartbroken over, but it reminds me of 1945 when the French massacred the Algerians. The reality is, every historian says that massacre was the turning point. We are witnessing the great awakening on the Palestinian cause. We're seeing the global shift. I ask you, have you ever seen journalists apologize for their coverage on Palestine? Have you ever seen a CNN presenter apologize like the one who did when she kept repeating the beheaded baby story? I ask you, why did she apologize? Was it because Biden called and said you're being unfair in your coverage? Was it because Netanyahu said, how could you be so rude to the Palestinians? No, it's because there's a voice that is more powerful than anything Biden has. There's a voice more powerful than anything Netanyahu has. There's a voice more powerful than any missile and tank. And it's your voice, if only you knew. The reality is, you keep saying this ummah is weak, but I argue that Blinken knows the power of Allah more than we do. For what is the power they see in you that meant that they had to stop and close those accounts on social media that you don't see in yourself? What is the power they see in you that they had to spend billions to try to silence you, but you broke it for free? What is the power they see in you that meant that Oliver Vahali in the EU tried to propose a bill to punish any social media that promotes Palestinian content? What is the power they see in you that you don't see in yourself? What is the power they fear in you that you don't appreciate in yourself? What is the power that made them use all of their resources to silence you that you are unable to see in yourself? What is the power they see in you that made them buckle and stumble and come up with all these marketing strategies that you don't see in yourself and insist doesn't exist? Why do they believe in the power of the ummah in a way the ummah doesn't believe in its own power? Why do they believe in the power of Allah and fear it and they want to crush it, while you stand and claim there is no power worth crushing in the first place. The reality is that when you look at the Ummah, they are strong and have always been strong. In Bosnia, when the Ottomans were kicked out by the Austro-Hungarians, the Yugoslavian kingdom came about and said, we have a problem. They said, what is the problem? The Bosniaks keep identifying as Muslim. Serbs keep identifying as Muslim. Croats keep identifying as Muslims. There is this Muslim identity that is contrary to the ethnic identities. This is problematic because we're trying to create a Yugoslav identity. So they moved to change the provinces in Yugoslavia, the kingdom, not the communist regime, that comes later. And they made the Muslims the minority in each of the new provinces to prevent them from mobilizing and organizing. When the Yugoslavian communist regime comes about, in 1938, they proposed the Muslim question. What is it about this religion, this Islam, this deen, that transcends the ethnic boundaries? How do we deal with this phenomenon when we're trying to promote a uniform communist identity? And they came up with a solution to the Muslim question. They executed the Muslim student leaders. They sent the rest of them into hard labor. They banned the printing of the Quran. They shut down the Muslim charities. They banned religious education. They insisted on uniform education. But the Bosnian Muslims did not give up. They kept teaching, kept mobilizing, kept moving. When the Ummah told them there's no point, the system is against you, the system is rigged, they said we would rather uphold La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah and suffer the consequences than be a people who give it up. We would rather be a people of justice and suffer than be a people of comfort and injustice. When Yugoslavia collapsed in the 1980s, Mladic and Karadzic stood up and they said, we will wipe out the Muslims from the heart of Europe. Mitterrand, the French president, told Bill Clinton, I will not allow Islam in the heart of Europe. I will not allow a Muslim state in the heart of Europe. It's in Bill Clinton's autobiography, for those who think Sami is making it up. When Mladic mobilized his army, they ethnically cleansed Banja Luka. They marched through the north of Bosnia, killing the Bosnians. On the bridge that Mehmet Sokolo built in Visegrad, they used to line up the Bosnian, the Muslims, with the hijab. They would slit their throats and throw them in the river. That's why the river used to go red with blood, and why no Bosniak wants to visit that bridge, even though it's a historic monument. In 94-95 Srebrenica, Mladic walks in and records himself and says, what a glorious day where we take revenge. He massacres 8,000 Bosnians. He makes a father call out to his sons who've run away and says, tell your sons to come down from the hills and we promise to give you amnesty. And the father in the video goes, sons come, they've promised me amnesty. Son comes, they promise me security. The sons fear for their father, they come down the hills. Mladic slaughters them and puts them in mass graves. But after 95, where are the Muslims in Bosnia? They are roaring, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Because no matter the persecution, no matter the colonization, no matter the relentless bombardment and violence, this ummah doesn't give up. This ummah is not weak. This ummah has always been powerful. Because no matter what the circumstance or the struggle, we always come out on top. We always never give up on Allah. We always stand for justice. Because no matter how much they persecute us, Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. Let me tell you about my ummah. I went to France and I met a French journalist and he said to me, Monsieur Sami, nous avons un grand problème. We have a big problem. What is the problem? He said, we have an issue. Our new French generation, their heroes are the Muslim N'Golo Kante, the Muslim Karim Benzema, the Muslim Zinedine Zidane, the Muslim Paul Pogba. Sami, would you accept Griezmann being the hero in Saudi? I said, Griezmann would never be a hero there because we're a people of justice who resonate with justice. The new French generation is resonating with justice, is resonating with what's right. That's why they're abandoning your ways and joining us. Let me tell you about my ummah. When Ataturk drove out Islam from the Turkish sphere, when Ataturk massacred the Kurds who took to the streets demanding Islam be protected in a new state, when Ataturk banned the printing of the Quran, when he executed the scholars and exiled the rest, the Turks did not say the ummah is weak. The Turks, they said, Wallahi, we will continue for La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. They would teach the Quran in secret. When Ataturk tried to go even further and ban those who wear hijab from going to the university, the women would gather together in their homes, in their basement, to hide from the istikhbarat, from the intelligence. They would hide to teach the Quran and educate the Muslim women, until the Muslim women became the most educated, not the secular ones. In 1950s, the repression became even worse. But you know these Muslims, this ummah that you said was weak, or you claim is weak, in the 1960s, they made the first crack in a system that was designed to be against them. Ataturk had told the military, you must do a coup on anybody who attempts to re-Islamize the state. And they fulfilled it. In 1948, it was Ataturk's Turkey, or his successor, who recognized Israel first. First Muslim country to recognize Israel. In 1960, the Muslims kept going and they made the debt. They delivered Adnan Menderes to power. Adnan Menderes restored the adhan. The Muslims were strong enough that the military, after their coup, after they executed Adnan Menderes for restoring the adhan, the Muslims were weak in that they could not protect Adnan Menderes, but too strong that the military could not reverse and ban the adhan again. In 1980s, the Muslims cracked again because they kept going. Muslims are a people who keep going. Muslims are a people who keep moving. Muslims are a people who keep going for justice. Ibadallah, in 1982, 1981, the Muslims cracked the system again. The military panicked, did a coup again. The Muslims, they didn't turn around and say, oh, it's useless, the system is rigged, everything's against us, we're being persecuted, we're a miserable people, we're a weak people, or the like. The Muslims said, we go again. We're getting closer. Public opinion is shifting. The world is seeing the reality of genocide. The world is finally calling out and seeing Israel not as a haven of persecuted Jews, but as genocidal maniacs. In 1996-97, Erbakan comes to power. This time now the system is breaking, it's cracking. This isn't just a crack now, it's heaving. You can feel the pillars start to collapse. The military does a last gasp effort, they topple Erbakan in a coup. 5 years later, the Turks smash the system and they deliver Erdogan to power. When you see Turkey today, is it not a haven for the Muslims in a way it wasn't under Ataturk? That's the Muslims who keep going. Somebody once said to me, a sheikh, that Islam is problematic, Islam is a problem. And in the car I went, astaghfirullah, how can you say that, sheikh? He said, Islam is a social problem. A'udhu billah, how can you say that? Sheikh, fear Allah. He said to me, hear me out, stop being more self-righteous. I said, astaghfirullah, I'm innocent of what the sheikh is about to say. A'udhu billah. He said to me, Islam is a problem, think about it, sir. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, for the first 40 years of his life, was he ever persecuted? What was his reputation amongst Quraysh? He was known as being trustworthy, kind, a man of responsibility, a man of dignity, somebody that people would come and leave their gold and their wealth with because they knew he would never cheat them. He said, when did they start to persecute the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? When he stood up and he said, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, and to uphold justice, to give the rights of the neighbor, to stop burying the daughters alive, and to uphold the rights and social and to produce social welfare. And they persecuted him for it. Because the reality is that societies end up in a status quo where they uphold injustice. They disliked the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, even though they knew he was sincere. They hated him because he spoke out for justice. The reason you're under pressure today is because you're speaking out for justice. The reason you're feeling this backlash is because you're standing for justice. The reason you feel that struggle, why I think I may not be allowed through the border on my next leg, but we'll see how it goes, inshallah. Any lawyers here, I can contact you from the airport, I really appreciate it. To be honest, I don't mind going back to London, I love London, but in any case, people said the Muslim ban is really, really bad if Trump implements it. But let me assure you guys, you won't miss me for 4 years. I promise after 4 years I'll come back. Don't miss me too much, don't worry too much about it. Okay? I'm not too worried about that. The point is that when you look at the Ummah and what it's able to achieve, when you look at what it's done for Gaza, the way that it shifted the public opinion, when you look at the way that the Belgian Deputy Prime Minister is calling for sanctions on Israel, when Spain is saying it's ready to recognize a Palestinian state, when Macron himself, the most racist president you probably have in Europe, comes up and calls for a ceasefire. And I asked some diplomats, why did Macron call for a ceasefire? And they said, and I promise you, they said that Macron got sick and tired of going all around France, hearing Monsieur President, please ceasefire now, ceasefire now, ceasefire. So Macron eventually got so sick and tired of hearing it that he entered the palace and said, listen, I'm going to say ceasefire now, but Israel has the right to self-defense. And the media only focused on the ceasefire part. You believe that your voice has no value, but your voice is an elevated form of resistance. And the proof is that the Prophet Muhammad said, "Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadihi." He who sees something that is wrong, let him change it with his hand. But if he cannot, let him change it with his tongue. Let him condemn it. Let him call it out. And if they cannot, then let him condemn it in his heart. And that's the weakest of faith. Those who speak out are in an elevated form of resistance. Those who retweet are in an elevated form of resistance. Those who like to elevate a tweet on an algorithm are in an elevated form of resistance. I sit at night time and sometimes I see and I've seen a video and I retweet, I go, yeah, take that Netanyahu, like this, and I do it. Somebody thinks, Sami, you're going overboard with social media stuff. I say, no. And there are some who don't want to do it out of a duty to stand for justice. In Algeria, we have a concept. It's called skara. Now, for those who don't know what skara is when you're in an argument with somebody who's stronger than you and they're beating you, but you've discovered something minor that really annoys them. So you're losing the battle, but because you know it annoys them, you keep doing it. He hits you, slaps you, you say, yeah, but you're an idiot. Don't call me an idiot. Boom, and you say, idiot. That's skara. You keep doing it, skara. You know what hurts them, so you do it, skara. So if I do something you don't like just to annoy you, I'm doing it, skara. When you see they spend billions to shut social media to keep your voices down, when you see that it upsets them, when you see the way they're upset, shift the public opinion, surely at least the weakest of Iman is, guys, we keep talking about it, why? Skarafi. You can all do the sign, but it feels really satisfying. Skarafi. Skara is a lovely, wonderful concept, even though I used to hate it growing up in Algeria, because my cousin used to always do it to me. They'd be like, Sami, I'm like, just stop it now. No, Skarafi, I'm doing it, just because I don't like you. It is what it is. But there's also another reason why we need to mobilize as well. When you look at the states, it is as if Allah could have chosen any of the American states to be the swing states to make the difference in the elections. It's as if Allah chose the states where the Muslims have the deciding vote. Axios reports that if Biden loses even a sliver of the Muslim vote, he loses the election. Political reports, if Biden loses 100,000 Muslim votes in Michigan, Biden loses the election. It's as if Allah has put the power in your hands to make the difference. That's why the Democrats are panicking. The problem is though, the Democrats at this moment in time, they don't believe that you are people of conviction. Biden was asked yesterday, aren't you worried the Muslim votes are going to punish you? And he said, dude, the other guy is Trump, he's going to do a Muslim ban. Genocide is not as bad as a Muslim ban. I can kill 25,000 Palestinians, but these Muslims are worried their relatives won't be able to come to America. That's dearer to them than the genocide. And the reason the Democrats believe that is they believe that Muslims are not a people of struggle, they're not a people of sacrifice. There's a tweet that I really like from an American Muslim who wrote on a tweet when the Democrats sent the Muslim ban, the Democrats said they're going to put the Muslim ban. She said, I'd like to say to the Democrats that we survived 4 years of Trump. We survived 4 years of his racism and bigotry and Islamophobia over like 20,000 Palestinians did not survive 4 years of Biden. We survived 4 years of Trump in our lovely, comfortable homes. I know this part of the world, mashallah. When I went back to London on my last trip, I walked into my flat, I said to Sumaya, my wife, I told her, Sumaya, I feel claustrophobic here. So you ain't seen these houses they have on the West Coast in America. My brother has a saying, one day I said to him, my brother is a businessman in Tokyo, speaks fluent Japanese, very strange. When you hear him go, so this guy, my brother once I said to him, Yusuf, life is not about money, but he said, Sami, it's true, but I'd rather cry in a Mercedes than in your Toyota Yaris. So the point is, you survived 4 years of Trump in a very comfortable circumstance. No hassle, I'm not jealous in any way whatsoever. I love London, God save the king. I don't know how much I love it these days after seeing what's in America. Anyways, Biden believes that none of you will compromise that comfort or security that you have for the sake of 20,000 Palestinians. Biden believes that the worst of Trump, which is not that Trump, by the way, I'm not advocating Trump. I'm saying let's talk about the worst case scenario. Trump wins, and there's censorship on campuses. Sami can't come to America anymore. Well, look a bit sad, guys. See, at least you look sad, you know? You're the guy who dragged me out here. Trump is not going to send a US Marshal to your house and say, this land now belongs to a white supremacist. Trump is not going to deploy the US Army to commit a genocide against you. He might do the US Army to surround the Supreme Court, maybe. Thank you so much. Biden believes that the worst of Trump, which is that you suffer in comfort, is not worth compromising for the sake of the Palestinians, for the genocide. There's also another reason, however, why Biden has been digging his heels with Costas. It's because Biden is genuinely confused. And again, the views expressed are those of the speaker. So if you go to Jeddah, just say, I didn't meet Sami, I wasn't here. Biden is also confused that when he talks to the Saudis and the UAE, they're telling him that we don't have a problem with what's happening. The Saudis are telling him we're ready to normalize regardless that 20,000 Palestinians have been killed. Brett McGurk is going to go to Saudi Arabia, and the reports today, 1 hour, while I was looking at my phone, 1 hour ago it was reported that the Saudis are telling the Americans that, okay, we'll normalize with Israel imminently, but does this deal include a NATO-style security agreement? If you give us that, we'll even join your alliance in the Red Sea to go to war in Yemen. Biden would rather go to war than call for a ceasefire. The Saudis are saying, give us the NATO-style security agreement, we don't give a toss about what happens in Palestine. That's why Biden says, you're telling me the Muslims are angry. The land of the two holy mosques is telling me it's fine. You're telling me Muslims are angry. I'm seeing some of the imams saying, don't talk about Gaza because, it's a fitna to tell you against your ruler. The UAE is telling me we will not reverse normalization of ties. Abdul Khaliq Abdullah, a prominent UAE commentator, was saying he was lambasting the Israelis. And I was shocked, because UAE, you can't say anything that's against the government. I know some of you like Dubai, Abu Dhabi. I know you like to go to the Sheikh Zayed Mosque and you want to make dua, even though there's bloodshed everywhere around you, but you don't see it. It's a nice mosque and it's a nice place to go for holiday or the like. You're putting your money into the weapons that are killing the Sudanese and Western Sudan. But it's okay, it's nothing to do with you, because you can go to the mosque and pray 5 times in Sheikh Zayed Mosque. Allah Ibarak. May Allah not increase you. When Abdul Khaliq Abdullah put out a tweet that the people want to kick out the Israeli ambassador, he put the tweet, he had to delete the tweet within half an hour, because the UAE told him, don't touch normalization of ties. Which brings me back to the point. You have a chance now to punish Biden. You have a chance to punish Genocide Joe. You have a chance to tell the world that when you commit genocide, you can't get a second term. You have a chance to show the world that you can commit genocide, but you can't scare us with a racist, because we'd rather live with a racist than a genocide. Biden is telling you that if you committed, someone who committed a genocide is better than someone who might commit a genocide. It's up to you now to say to the American public that genocide can't happen. And for those of you who think that if we punish Biden, then the other guy might be worse, let me ask you, why is the Zionist lobby so strong in America? It's not because they deliver candidates, it's because they punish candidates. If it was only because they deliver candidates, then the candidates would do what Bush did to the Muslims in 2000, when the Muslims delivered him in Florida, and he turned his back and went and bombed the daylights out of Iraq and Afghanistan. The Zionists are powerful because they're ready to punish candidates and to topple them, so the candidates are very careful about their seats. The only other minority that has that power is the Black Caucasus. This would be the first time in American history where Muslims demonstrate their ability to punish. And let me tell you, right now when the Congress people come, right now when they come, on the way, on the car, they tell their secretary, how can I impress the Muslims? And they will say, they say something called Assalamu alaikum. So that the congressperson will come and say, Assalamu alaikum. We'll be like, it's actually Assalamu alaikum, it's fine. They might say Mubarak Eid, actually it's the other way around, sir. But thank you very much for visiting. I promise you, you punish Genocide Joe, and you topple a sitting US president, mark my words, the Congress people will come pray tahajjud with you, Ramadan. Mark my words that the American Congress person will come to you, he'll stand in front of you, and he'll say, after you punish Genocide Joe, he will say, guys, you know what? We need to stand together, because as Prophet Muhammad said, every act has an intention, But let me put it to you this way, if Genocide Joe wins, because you refuse to deploy the power to punish him, no one will ever respect you again. If it can be said that 20,000 Palestinians can be killed and slaughtered in a genocide, and the Muslims still felt that 4 years of discomfort was not worth it, no one will respect you. You will be a humiliated people, And when you say that the ummah is weak, you will deserve to be weak. Yes, I'm gaslighting you. You will deserve to be humiliated and weak. Because if not even a genocide can turn you to stand for justice, then absolutely nothing will. So when November comes, when Joe Biden is toppled, Genocide Joe, you will say to the American public, I'm ready to struggle with what's coming, but never in a million years will I let it be said that I allowed Genocide Joe to commit a genocide and have a second term. I would rather die than allow that to happen. You don't have to die, but I would rather suffer than allow that to happen. We will say no to genocide, no to Genocide Joe, and we will say very loud and clear that when Biden loses, when we take to the streets, we will say Biden lost, free Palestine, barakallahu fikum.
Slight disclaimer that he already said. It is in his own words, does not reflect the views of the organization. And, you know, subhanAllah, especially for MAS and HCF 501c3 organizations that do not advocate or tell you how and who to vote for. So I'm in the political world, so I'll say that with the organizational hat. Brother Sami is here, so that slight disclaimer is absolutely needed. Brothers and sisters, I know it's been a long night. I did not want to interrupt him, subhanAllah, he was on a roll. And as we kind of come to the end of this session, 1 o'clock, first of all, it's 10 o'clock and y'all are still sitting here. MashaAllah, that's amazing. Alhamdulillah, I thought after the lockdown we got trained into just making sure we're all home by 7 or 8 or 9 p.m. So one of the things that we really wanted to make sure that we're coming together for is understanding the importance of keeping Gaza in our minds. So I'm not going to repeat all the points that Brother Sami mentioned, but in these moments, in these difficult moments, that we are at a crossroads, especially as an American community, beyond just the Muslim community, the American community as a whole, this movement for the liberation for Palestine and calling for a ceasefire is a multi-faith, multi-racial, and multi-generational movement for the liberation of Palestine. And this is a beautiful moment for us to make sure we're not just stuck in our own little bubbles, but we're able to walk and go outside of that so that we can continue to have these kind of conversations, because there's so many folks out there who may not be aware of what's happening. Even though right now our Palestinian brothers and sisters have been documenting their own genocide that we've been witnessing from the comfort of our homes as this footage, this heartbreaking footage, one after the other. SubhanAllah, I was looking up some Instagram accounts the other day, a Palestinian journalist on the ground, and it's really heartbreaking when you see the ones that you've been watching for a very long time have already been martyred and returned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And so right now we're seeing 26,000 plus Palestinians who have been killed, much more than that, because even those who are under the rubble, some have not been counted, right? 60,000 injured, 1.9 million Palestinians have been displaced. And the reality is, it is upon us to continue using that power that Brother Sami reminded us of, whether it is making sure that we're being loud and clear within our social media space, or organizing together to make sure our elected officials see the struggle, the pain of our Palestinian brothers and sisters, and all of us who are standing up for justice. So this is a moment of calling for each and every single one of us. This is a moment of clarity. I remember being young and studying history and wondering if I lived at the time of the civil rights movement, if I would be standing on the sidelines, being a bystander, watching things unfold while others push our country to really move forward in the direction that it needs to, so that we can be that beacon of light that we may be preaching, but we don't practice here and also abroad as well. And so this is a moment of calling. Yes, we called you here for a fundraiser so that we are able to make sure that our brothers and sisters in Gaza and in Palestine get the humanitarian relief that they need, but this is also a moment to call for action. This is a moment for us to plug in to the work that's happening locally. Brother Abdullah talked about it beautifully. Every act that we do, every action that we take part in, every voice that we uplift is going to be amplified in the way that Brother Sami beautifully reminded us of again. And again, this is not just within our communities. We're seeing the streets being filled with the cries for justice, with people who are hearing and answering the cries of Gaza. Just the last week, I was in DC marching with 400,000 plus individuals who are proclaiming this call for justice over and over again, putting pressure on the Biden administration to stop funding this genocide, putting pressure on the Biden administration in Congress that, you know what, this is America, let's put America first. Let's make sure that that's a right wing, oh my goodness. Y'all can tell it's a long night, but Sami, may Allah reward you. I never used the right wing messaging up in anywhere, subhanAllah. But the reality is making sure that we're not funding a genocide, right? That we are making sure we're holding our elected officials accountable. So believe in that power, believe in yourself, and believe in each other, because this movement is a beautiful movement. This movement is a beautiful movement. This movement for the liberation of Palestine is going to be, and I said earlier, that multi-faith, multiracial, multi-generational efforts. And until we see a free Palestine, we will not relent in our efforts, inshallah, inshallah. We know victory comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we know that the efforts and that ability to be able to create that change is going to take that commitment to each other and commitment to this cause long term, inshallah, until we see a free Palestine. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. Thank you all so much for taking part in this beautiful moment of community, of gathering, of welcoming our dear brother Sami from the UK. Hopefully you do come and stay in California for longer, inshallah. We'll keep you here. Not the East Coast, here in California. We're the 5th largest GDP in the world, right? I don't know what other selling points that we have. Things are changing in California, so Allahu Akbar. So thank you all so much for coming. There is this Islamic Center of Eastlake. I remember when this center was being built. I think it was 2012. If I remember correctly, our Eastlake brothers and sisters. So there's an event, a banquet for Eastlake Masjid for this project. We're bringing Dr. Mark Lamont Hill and Dr. Khalid Baidoun, and guest MC is going to be Moses Akame, who's hilarious, subhanAllah. So I'm going to make the screen bigger. If folks can just kind of take out their phones, take a picture of the QR code for those of you who will be here on February 17th to be able to attend. Inshallah, we're inviting you to be able to attend and support this project. The Eastlake community has been growing. We used to live very, very close to it. We didn't have a masjid, so I used to go 30 minutes just to come pray at a masjid, and that community has been growing. This project is a phenomenal one to support, so I just want to make sure that I don't forget that announcement. The second to last thing I'm going to mention is that it's been a long night. And it's been a long night in the sense of you came, rain or shine, to be here and listen to the wonderful speech that was given by the brother Sami, but also to fundraise as well. And so in this moment, we ask Allah to forgive us for any shortcomings from the organizer's part, from my part as an MC, and also from each other as well. In those moments that we feel a little bit fatigued, in those moments that we feel a little bit tired or falling asleep, and I promise I'll end with this so you can go get your sleep, inshallah. Just remember how our Palestinian brothers and sisters are feeling in those moments, and let these moments of tiredness really remind you that after you go home, after you get some rest, get back on it tomorrow. Get back on it tomorrow, inshallah. And so if the Nurmin can raise the red paper, the pledges are on the table for those of you who wanted to give but not have had a chance, please do so. And you can bring it up to any of the volunteers who, inshallah, the volunteers can stand up, or just bring it to the front, or actually just direct it to the table. That might be a lot easier for you. Jazakumullahu khairan, subhanakallahumma bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. And of course, in the thousands, in the millions, we are Palestinians.